Shruti-smriti-purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat-padam Shankaram Loka-Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra-bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastu Andakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are taking the topic of asangata. Sangata means non-attachment to non-attachment, period. So attachment has certainly some advantages and some disadvantages. Eventually it has more disadvantages than advantages. And the true moksha consists of understanding that I'm really not attached to anything. I am a complete independent being. So this is what the Shastra says that you have to keep in mind. I am Atma Asangaha. Yes, Shruti says that. So the question is, so if this is the case, what is said is that Sangata, or the sense of attachment, connection, connectivity, let's say connection, is really a notion, not a fact. So we can have a notion about something which may not be accurate. So this is where the connection to things lies. It's not a fact, it's a notion. So because of the non-understanding, we feel the connectivity as both natural and needed. So when the baby is born and it starts to depend upon its parents, I mean it's already dependent on the parents, but when it starts to feel that I'm dependent on my parents, then the connectivity starts. And it is needed, and it looks like it is a very natural one, which doesn't need to be disturbed in any way. But it turns out that this is not true. That a basic connectivity is necessary as part of the creation, but not the way we take it. So let's take a kind of a multi-act play that has been designed by a writer, producer, and director. Those combinations. So it's a very specific storyline. So in that storyline of the play, connectivity is very important. Timing is very important. Relativity is very important. So for example, supposing there is a scene where multiple people have to come together and they're talking to each other, as it happens in all these sitcoms. So there what happens is that there is a person already there in the room, and then there's a knock on the door and somebody else comes in. So there is a connectivity in time. There is a person who's supposed to be there first, and then as the storyline goes, somebody knocks on the door, and then you say, "Oh, hello, how are you? Please come in." And then some other people join in. And so then they have some kind of a scene as part of the play. But here, if you notice, in this role playing in the play, there is really no sense of connection the way we see in our life. Because we see connection as necessary and kind of a problem in many times. So connectivity here means that you are being bound by a rope. You're connected to a rope. And on the other side of the rope, there are some other people who are tugging at it. So when they tug at the rope, chances are that you are also going to be pulled along. You may resist it, you may have some interplay, but the fact of the matter is that as long as the rope is tied around your waist or somewhere else in your body, you're going to be moving around at the mercy of the other people on the end of the rope. So what happens is that in life, there is in fact a very sophisticated play. This is a very sophisticated multi-act play that Ishvara has. And in this one, connectivity is important. Timing is important. Who comes first, who comes second, like we saw in the play, is part of the storyline. But unlike the storyline in a play, there is no emotion involved. You don't have people saying, "Why did he come here first? I should have been sitting here and inviting him." You don't ask questions like that because the whole story is based on certain sequencing of connectivity, connection, timing. What comes first, what comes later, what happens to them. And then you just fulfill that part. And you play your role very well. If it is a good role or a bad role, it doesn't bother you. You just play it very well. And then you undress, and then you take your mics off and so on, and then you're done. So the life is also a play with a lot of interconnectivity, a lot of timing, a lot of sequencing, a lot of give and take. But because of my error that I am not a role player, but this is who I am. This is me. Because of that non-understanding, you begin to put something more in the connectivity. So there comes a time where it becomes me and mine and others. So there are so many examples of this. You can just see this, that there is no real, there's no reason for all these emotions. But I think, frankly, the example of the modern sports is a very, team sports is a very good example in this reason. So what happens is that, as we have seen, there's a person that comes in from, let's say you used to live in New York and you got a job in San Francisco, and you started watching some baseball, San Francisco Giants or the 49ers football, whatever it is. And then you have a kind of a technical appreciation of the game. This is a good team, this is not a good team, who are the players. Like that, your knowledge of the local team increases if you are a sports fan. But then something funny happens. Pretty soon you start to have an emotional connection with the local team. You didn't have it before you moved from New York, but now that you have found a job and you bought a home and you're now connected to the Bay Area, their San Francisco Giants and the 49ers become your team. And at this point in time, the pure understanding of the technicalities of the game, who are good players, bad players, not so good, etc., is pushed in the background. All you want to do is to make sure they win. And you get very upset if they don't win. So this upsetting was not there in the beginning, but now because of your superimposed notion that this is my team, it's kind of like a piece of you. This is what a fan is. Fan stands for fanatic. That you are just you make yourself connected to the team. I think this is probably the best example of that. But the more common one, of course, is that there are thousands of children born, thousands of children who get a problem, thousands of children get hurt, but you don't bother. It doesn't concern you because it's Ishwara's world. That's going to happen. But if it happens to be your child or your grandchild, then in addition to just a basic concern, we don't want any children to get hurt. But if my child gets hurt, something happens to you. Now, I remember this incident. So my firstborn granddaughter, Arya, who's now 17, so this is like maybe 13 years old, when she was maybe 4, and she was attending a local school, kindergarten school in Stanford. And her mom and dad were both working. And so they had put down my name to the teachers to call in case there is a problem and they're not able to reach the parents. So one day I got a call from this and saying, "Is this Mr. Kapoor?" I said, "Yes." She says, "I'm sorry to tell you that Arya fell." So she was always a very active person. And at the age of 4 or so, something like that, she was hanging upside down from a monkey bar. Most of the children were not doing it, but she said, "I had to do this." And in the monkey bar, you know what happens? I think you put your legs in so that it holds you, but that the legs can move and you can fall on the ground, which she did. And she landed on her elbow, and she broke it. So this teacher said, "Mr. Kapoor, I'm sorry to tell you that Arya has broken her elbow, and I was trying to reach her parents, but they are not there, so they gave me your name. So I said, I'll be right there." She said, "We have taken some initial precautions. We have wrapped her, but from the pain, it's very obvious that she has broken it. So we need to take care of it. Can you please help?" So I said, "Absolutely." I was only like 4 miles away. So I jumped into my car. And now it was a different situation. It was my first grandchild. And you're very attached to everyone, but that was something new. And so it gave a lot of problems in terms of heartaches and how is she doing. It turns out she recovered very well. In fact, I remember asking her a couple of days later, "Arya, does it hurt?" And she says, "No, it doesn't hurt. It's okay." She had it on a sling. But we kept asking her every other day, "Arya, how are you feeling?" We'll call her my son and say, "How is Arya doing?" This is what happens. This is what is called connection. This is called attachment. If there's other people who might have really fallen on that, then I feel some other person will take care of it. I'm sorry that anybody falls, but if it is my grandchild that falls, it creates a special problem with it. Swami Chinmanand had given a very beautiful example. I'll never forget this. It was very, when he gave this example, it's like fresh in my mind. It must have been about 1973, 1974. Some of those scenes that don't leave you. I don't remember a lot of the other things that I've done and being and people I've met, but things that really impressed you, they leave an imprint on you. I remember when Swamiji gave this example and when I was really understanding of it. So here was the example he gave. He says that, look, there is a friend of yours who has a very expensive German car, like Mercedes or BMW. And he goes to India for a month and says, listen, this is, can you please make sure that this car is in the garage, not out in the sun, because I just bought it, it's very expensive. And by the way, please use it because I want it to be running when I come back. So by all means, use it, but keep it in the garage. So you drive the, I remember the first time I drove a German car, it felt something very different, very sure, very, nowadays all the cars have become something like that, but in those days, I used to drive a Toyota Corolla, and it was loosey-goosey, and this steering was just, so when I bought, I remember buying a Mercedes long time ago, and the first time I drove it, I said, my God, this is fun to drive. So I kept it for a while and then I sold it and so on. But anyway, suppose you have a friend who left a BMW with you and you first started driving it and you enjoyed it. And you say, oh my goodness, this is a different car. So you started using it. And you got so taken by it that when your friend comes back and he says, okay, I'm back, I want my car back, and you say, well, can I keep it for a couple of more days? You know, I have this trip coming up. And so the friend says, this is very strange. I want my car back, but he says, okay, keep it for a couple of days. Now you are very reluctant to give the car back, even though it is really not yours. You are just a protector of it. I remember Swami Chinmayanandaji gave this example. He says, do you know something? This is exactly how Ishvara gives you your family, your spouse and your children. And there is a purpose for it. There's a purpose for it. The purpose of really, this is well talked about in our Shastra. Don't just say this is me talking to you. But let's talk about the spouse. You know, the most important function of a spouse, a married spouse, you can approximate it by having a friendship or living and so on and so forth in the modern days, I don't know. But I'm talking about a married relationship. The most important function of a spouse is ekagrata. Ekagrata. Ekagrata means a single pointed focus on one individual. Because before marriage, especially if you're in the West, you've got different relationships with different people. You date someone, then you don't like her or him, you do date somebody else, and then you stay together for a while, it gets broken, and your mind is in pieces. But once you get married, the biggest advantage of the marriage is that you stop fooling around and you have a single pointed focus on making this other person happy. And this is, of course, a bi-directional relationship. He or she should be making you happy. But more than that, it is a training for our mind Do not wander around aimlessly looking for relationships, but forget about that and just have a single relationship. This is the most important thing about marriage. Vivaha samskara. Out of all the samskaras, one of the most important one is vivaha samskara. Vivaha means marriage in Sanskrit. So this is one thing. Then comes children. The children have even a more advanced purpose. You know what that is? The purpose that, you have other purposes like taking care of them and this, that, or the other. I'm not talking about that. But the main purpose is developing love and a temperament of tolerance, patience, love. This is the most important one. Because it is hidden in all of us. We have love in us, but it's not expressed. And not expressed deeply until a child is born. Then the invocation of the love comes up. You care about the child. I've forgotten those days, but I now talk to my son Manoj, who just had a young son, Arjun, just a couple of months back. And every morning we ask them, how was the night? And it was invariably very disturbed. Arjun wakes up and has to be fed, and then you put him to sleep, and you think that the next 2-3 hours are going to be peaceful. No. He wakes up after a half hour again. And then the other child, Sania also wakes up. It is so much disturbance. But you know what? Nobody says, oh my gosh, why does it happen? These things do happen. But generally not. You develop a certain tolerance towards it. And so this invocation of tolerance and love is the main purpose of having children. Anyway, that was not what Swami Chinmayananda said. What Swami Chinmayananda said was that just like your friend had left a BMW in your ward for 1 month, and you are the kind of the trustee. Similarly, the Ishvara leaves a child with you for a short time as a trustee. You are not the owner of the child. The owner is somewhere else. So don't tell me that you need to be an owner of somebody to really invoke your full love. No. A trusteeship is good enough. In fact, I would say that a trusteeship is even more important than ownership. I think there were a couple of reasons, there were a couple of cases where my friends have all left their valuables with us, cars, bicycles, I don't know, it's different things that has happened, I'm sure, to all of us. And it's our common experience that we take better care of someone else's property because they have entrusted us with it than our own. Isn't it? So don't say that the trusteeship does not give you the opportunity to love and have affection and all. No. But at the end of the day, we should not forget that they belong to Ishvara. So therefore, this kind of connection that you develop to the child. So this is somebody who's left a child with you and you're supposed to take good care of it, and it really is meant for your benefit. your own invocation of love and affection and ekagrata and so on. But if you turn that into a connection which gives you sukha dukkha, then you are exaggerating. It's kind of like in the role, you play the role and you're done with it. But if you start to have some emotional connection with the whole story, and you come home and you say, I didn't get a good part and I don't understand this and I wish I could do this better. Why do the other people do this? That kind of a thing doesn't happen. It could happen, but it doesn't happen. Why? Because you know it's a play. And if you're not getting a good part, then it's okay. You can try for it next time. But that's not the case in our life. We don't know that we are also role players. We don't know that. This is the problem. We are. We are part of this enormously complex, multi-act play. And this fact does not become visible to us, does not become, it doesn't express itself until we start to study the Vedas. Because only then you come to understand that I have a life more than what I am playing this life with. I have an identity more than the role that I'm playing. And this is what is taught repeatedly, clearly, exhaustively, that, hey, this is not you. This is a role that you are playing. And just the very introduction to this idea makes me a little less connected. But the reality of this is not easy to grasp. Just by saying you are the Atma, you're not connected. There's a lot that has to happen. So this is what these lessons are for. That if you want to really see your absolute asangata, non-connectivity, non-connection, asangata, then you have to have the viveka of where you are making the mistake and what should I do in order to move definitely, perhaps slowly, but definitely towards asangata. This is the reason for these 7 lectures by Swami Akhandananda that we are doing. Okay. So here, so in these talks that Swamiji gave in Calcutta, from which this book was written, he proceeds as follows. So let's follow his sequence of gaining asangata. He says that first of all, when there is an expression of prakriti, the nature. Prakriti means that something that you find when you land in this life. Natural, nature. That's the handiwork of Ishvara. How trees and oxygen and sun and moon and earth and all those kinds of things. This is what Prakriti is. So when there is an expression of this Prakriti, then the question of Sangata and Asangata really doesn't arise. If it arises, then it's very non-damaging. It's okay. So for example, when you take a life, who you were born with, who your parents are, was just given to you as part of Prakriti. You don't have any, that comes much later, the connection. But it's okay. You don't know, and you don't need to know about how that happened. Similarly, whether you are a boy or a girl, it's not up to you. Ishvara made that decision, and you find yourself to be in one gender or the other. What your health will be, how long you will live, this is all part of the Prakriti. And how healthy or unhealthy you will be, what bodily problems you will have, all of this is part of Prakriti. Whether you're going to have a heart problem, or you're going to have kidney issues, or you have some blood issues or bone issues, whatever it is, it's all part of given to you. There's nothing to do with Asangata or Asangata. But what happens is that when you make a decision on your own, there you have Asangata. You have Sangata. Sangata means connection. Because you feel, I have done this. So you have Kartritvam. You have a doership. And so whenever there is a doership, you have to have Bhoktritvam. So that is the end of it. When you do something, it is always with some results. It is not nishkama karma. That will come later on. But you always expect something to happen. And that expectation can either be met or not met. Again, it's not up to you, but to a certain extent you can manipulate it, but generally speaking, you have nothing to, all of a sudden, as they say in the West, there's always a slip between the cup and the lip. So that can always happen. And you have nothing, you don't know why it happened. But in general, you feel, I am the Karta. I am responsible for myself. No one else is responsible. I am responsible, and I have to reap the benefits or the problems of my action. So you have Kartritvam and Bhoktritvam. So here in the Bhagavad Gita, it starts a lesson to tell you that this feeling that you are the Karta, you are the Bhokta, is not correct. As we saw earlier, this is a notion. It doesn't really have a fact. And I don't believe this. How can I believe this? Because I seem to be really, I can look left, I can look right, up, down, whatever it is, I can do that. But these are trivial things, but the more important things I can also do. I can change my career, I can study law, or I can study medicine. I did it. I have the consequences, whether I failed or past, I don't know, but I have decommitted to it. So all of that, it seems like it's me. So I don't understand how this is not true. So here, Swami Akhandananda points out that because it is not true, you have to find out how. You have to do the viveka. And in this viveka, you have to understand how your mind works, why you feel you are the karta and the bhokta, what is the effect of prarabdha karma about vasanas, whether the vasanas are to be completed or there can be a mukti from the vasanas. What is happening in my body? Why is it happening? What is the play? All of this has to be understood. And only then you will understand, as we will proceed further, that you are not the karta. You are assuming you are the karta, which is not true. Someone else is doing it. And the more you understand this, the more you will be on the road to asangata. So here in the Bhagavad Gita, on this whole chapter, in fact the whole set of talks is really based on references from the Bhagavad Gita. So here, Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse number 27 is pointed out. He says, Prakritehi kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. Prakritehi kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaram aham iti manyate. He says, really speaking, what is happening to you is a result of two things as part of Prakriti. And the two things are karma and guna. The vastu itself and its properties. And it is the interplay of these karmas and gunas that provide you with the opportunity of this vast set of experiences in your life. And because you don't understand this, you feel you are responsible for your own progress. When in fact you have a very small role to play. And that role that you have to play is to make sure that all of your karmas are directed towards an understanding of how this whole thing is happening. So here, Swami Akhandananda gives a very beautiful, he was sort of giving a sequence of things that we have to do. But he broke himself up and he says, let me give you some kind of like a diversion. So he talks a little bit about nishkama karma. Nishkama karma in Bhagavad Gita is very elaborately discussed. So nishkama karma means an action without any desire. Is what is called nishkama karma. There's a lot of very good commentaries by our Mahatmas and to explain this, that listen, even in our lesson course on the Bhagavad Gita, Swami Dayanandji has given an excellent treatise on this. Nishkama karma does not mean that you should not have expectations. That doesn't mean that. How can anybody do something without expectation? I remember Swami Dayanandji used to give this. He said, so he's explaining to Arjuna, he's kind of making it a drama. So Krishna is like this, talking to Arjuna, and said, I want to tell you about Nishkama karma. That is what you really should be doing. So Arjuna said, okay. So Arjuna starts to, to do something else, and he's not paying attention. And so Krishna tells him, hey, you're not listening to me. I'm telling you what Nishkama karma is, he says. You're not doing Nishkama karma. You're expecting me that I'll be listening to you. So your karma is also not Nishkama karma. So this is what he talked about, the fallacy, that no one can do any karma without expectations. You have to have some set of goals. That's not what it is. So here, Swami Makhandananda also takes a diversion and talks about Nishkama karma, and then joins the main explanation about the sequencing of how to go from Sangata to Asangata. Anyway, Nishkama karma, he says, consists of the following things, 5 things he lists. He says, Nishkama karma, the number 1 is the pavitrata of Hridaya. Hridaya pavitrata. Hridaya means the way you think, the way your emphasis is, your buddhi, your core of who you are, what kind of a person you are. So there is a person you are, it means your mind, how you act, how you think. So there is anything that makes this purer. And what is pavitrata? Apavitrata means likes and dislikes, hatred, and dissonance, fighting, and anger, disappointments. This is what apavitrata is. Pavitrata is just the opposite, where you have tolerance, you have love, you have expectations that are very reasonable, and you have acceptance, and you don't have this tremendous ups and downs. This is what the pavitrata of Hridaya is. So Nishkama means, and Nishkama karma means, you figure it out how you do it. But the goal should be, you should see whether your Hridaya is getting pavitra or not. None of us, our Hridayas are pavitra completely. But if we have to keep on purifying it through our attitudes, that means that so Nishkama karma means attitude. Having the right attitude. Swami Dayanandji used to talk about this all the time. He says karma yoga means attitude. How you take things to be. Whether you think the glass is half full or the half empty. So anything to do, Swami Akhandananda, going back to his list, first one is, Nishkama karma is your Hridaya, the pavitrata of your Hridaya getting better or not? Number 1. The second one is your memory, your bhakti of Ishvara, your arpana, your dhyanam, your bhajanam, your memorizing him, remembering him, considering him to be very influential in your life. And so the nishkama karma is that karma. From that standpoint, that suppose that even, of course it doesn't happen, but I can say that even a distasteful karma can turn into nishkama karma if it promotes an attitude of reverence towards Ishvara. So this is the second point. The third point is promotion of jigyasa. Jigyasa means gyatum ichha, means that I want to really know how to do this. Your commitment towards improvement, towards understanding of Vedanta, of the scriptural aspects of it. If you are going in more in that direction, that is called nishkama karma. Then the next one is yathartha vastu jnanam. Yathartha vastu jnanam means a very clear knowledge of the nature of the Atma, which is all we are trying to do. And nishkama karma means that your actions, your attention, your priorities of life will be all devoted to making sure this happens. This is front and center. So he says, this is what nishkama karma is. So these are the 4 or 5 points that Swami Akhandananda feels is defining of the nishkama karma. Now there was one discussion that he talks about here from some of the teachers that he attended, he remembered, whether nishkama karma is for mukti or after mukti. So there are certain teachers who feel that you cannot do nishkama karma until you are mukta, until you have moksha. Swami Akhandananda says this is wrong. Once you have moksha, there is no need for nishkama karma. It will happen automatically. So how can you say it should be out of moksha? Really speaking, it is for moksha, which is consistent with all the other things that we talked about. So this was the one thing that he pointed out. So now we go back to the main thinking of main line. This nishkama karma discussion was just on the side. So now we go back to the main arguments for gaining akarmata. So there are 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita that were pointed out. So we are moving towards an understanding that I am not the karta. How do I understand that? Because that's not my experience. So in support of that argument that you are not the karta, 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita are pointed out and we will build on it. Those are chapter 12, verse number 29. And the second one was the one we already studied, which was chapter 3, number 27. So let's read them together. So the number 12:29 says, Prakrityaiva ca karmani kriyamanani sarvashaha yaha pashyati tatha atmanam akartaram saha pashyati. prakityaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvashah yah pashyati tathatmanam akartaram saha pashyati. And I'll explain that in a minute. Then the second one is the one that we already cited before. Prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudatma kartaramiti manyate. So the first one is, really speaking, all karmas arise out of Prakriti. And the one who sees this, one who understands this, yaha pashyati tatha atmanam akartaram saha pashyati. That one understands that I am not the karta. This is one verse. Then the second verse is, Prakritehi kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha. Again the same thing. Prakriti, all the kriyas done by, in that your experience in your life is done by Prakriti, either through the gunaihi or karmani sarvashaha, but ahankara vimudhatma kartaramiti manyate. While it is being done by other things, I am the doer becomes paramount in your mind. That I did it. In fact, it is being taken care of by a lot of things. Once Swami Dayanandji had given this example that when, I think I have told this to you before, you must recall, you must remember this, that when the British first introduced railroads to India, a lot of the small towns and even villages were connected. And so the railroad stopped at a village, and in the station, people were told, listen, if you have to go and carry, because people used to carry these huge burdens on the top of their head, and they would go and sell something a few villages over, 5 or 10 kilometers, they will walk. And then the railroads came, and some of these smaller railroads, they would stop at every 5th or 6th village so that the people can get on it. So this farmer who had this huge tokri on top of his head, they have this pagadi to make sure that it's not everything sitting on the head itself. It's some padding, and then they have this huge basket that they're carrying of goods, vegetables, whatever it is. This is what they used to do. So they say that it is true that when it was first introduced and the train stopped and you tell people, okay, now get on it, so the people will also get on it with the tokri on the top of their head. And then when the ticket master will come, they still had the tokri on top of your head. They're sitting there with the tokri on the top. So the ticket master says, hey, what are you doing? Put that one down. He says, oh, really? This was the thing. I think Swami Dayanandji or Swami Chitmananda, I forget who told this. He says, really speaking, it's hard to believe this is what is happening in our life. This is a laughable example, but it is not laughable. You don't realize how much is going on through prarabdha karma and the various vasanas and some kamya karmas and so on. And things are going on, and you can have some minor changes to it. But really speaking, you are not doing it. You already are not responsible for most of the things that you observe. You're not responsible for your heart beating. You're not responsible for all those things in your body. You're not responsible for what's happening outside. But somehow you have a connection to it. This is my body. So here Swami Vivekananda says that, this is what is called, what's it called? This is called bhava, kalpita bhava, yes, kalpita bhava. Kalpita bhava is that you're born as a human being and you should, so really speaking, as Vedanta points out, he says really the body-mind complex is given to us as a tool to become happy and to gain total happiness. This is the goal of life, and this is the goal of life, meaning the goal of my taking this form is to discover that I am the very source of the happiness. This is what the purpose is. But do I use my body-mind complex for that? No. I misuse it. I misuse it because of the kalpita bhava. What is kalpita bhava? Kalpita bhava means that you imagine some roles to yourself which are not necessary. That I am a superior being. That I am a high-class person. That I am a very well-read. Or that I have done some bad things in my life. Or I have done some good things in my life. I'm a punyatma. Or I'm a papi. Or I'm a brahmana. I'm kshatriya. All these are kalpita bhavas. And we cling to them. This is the rule of our life, of our family rather. People say that. This is our family's rule. This is the way we want to do it. You better learn this. So we have all these ideas that we cling on to that are not necessary. We're a simple being. And what we need to do is to go into nishkama karma for the purposes that the nishkama karma is talked about. Pavitrata of the hridaya, Bhagavan's samarpanam, dhyanam, jigyasa, yathartha vastu jnanam. All these things is what I should be doing to gain freedom. But yet, I get into politics, I get into family problems, I misuse the qualities given to me, and I become unhappy as a result of that. And what happens? Then, this is just a journey towards kind of like the final thing where we have to bring Ishvara into the equation. So this one requires a fair amount of explanation, and we will work on it. It's only 9 o'clock. I couldn't go more than that, but I think this is such an important topic that I'd rather have a fuller discussion of this next time. But let me at least read the verses that underline this. Very important verses in the Bhagavad Gita, often quoted. We have also taken it many times. Something we have to pay a lot of attention to and try to get an understanding of the importance of these verses. So, these are the two verses from the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verses number 61 and 62. I can recite this. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddesherjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddesherjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra arudhani mayaya. Then the next one is Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata yat prasadat param shantim Syanam prapsyasi shashvatam. So these two are the verses that complete this picture in terms of asangata, by going into some detail about how do these things happen? How come I am not the karta? Who is the karta? Who is responsible? So this we will take up. This is an important verse. We actually did this in the, I forget which chapter, 14th or 15th of the Panchadashi, in the Ananda Mimamsa. Swami Vidyaranya has taken this verse. Hriddesh Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Arudhani Mayaya. If you want to read through these two verses on your own with translations, please do so. But as for its importance in the context of karta and akarta, we will go over in the next class. So with that, let me wind up today's class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Text of very nice to see you all. So good that you could attend this. I think the verse that we talked about would be very significant, so I hope you can listen to it or watch it later. I think, yeah, that's an important verse, so I invite you to make sure that you listen to it. I think I had talked to some of you when we were in the last in-person class, which was delayed, and all that, it has been determined that our retreat for next year at the Sailorsburg Ashram will be for 1 week from Saturday to Saturday, June 1st through June 8th. And I would very much like to have many of you join in this time. We have a complete 1 year to go, so you should have plenty of notice to move your other responsibilities from here to there. But Shuddhatma and I have determined that those are the best dates for the retreat for next year. So I hope that we can have a larger contingent than the last couple of years, and I invite you to do so. I'm still haven't decided on the text for it. I may actually talk to Swami Viditatmanandaji. He is very busy with the preparations for the ashram's anniversary that is coming up. So I'm sure that he'll be pretty busy, but I do want to talk to him. But I have some ideas, and I will, as soon as I decide on that, I will let you know. But I hope you can keep that calendar open for next year. Okay, very good to see you. Namaskar. We'll see you next week. Hari Om.